Cops is filmed on location with the men and women of law enforcement. All suspects are innocent until proven guilty in a court of law.
What's up, everybody? It's your boy Shawn Patrick Greene. I'm here with a special guest. He's on standby. But of course, this isn't the episode I was looking for, but we have a special guest who a former Buffalo police officer. So we want to get into that real quick. But welcome to the Shawn P. Greene Show. We have all the links, all the social media on my website. And if you want to check it out, here it comes. ShawnPGreene.com. Now, a lot of people used to call me Shawn P. Greene as they thought it was a joke. My middle name is Patrick in high school. But I embraced it, and from that point on, it was kind of like, taking away the ammunition, so to speak. So, welcome, Shawn P. Greene from Buffalo, New York. I'm reporting on all kinds of things that are happening real time. Recently, we had a changeover of a Buffalo police commissioner. People who are local, they've seen the news, they know what's going on. We'll get into that later. Plus, this time of the year is Lent. Now, both the Roman Catholic, the Eastern Orthodox, and some other variations of the Christian faith celebrate Lent in different ways. And of course, a lot of people, especially this area, is really big on the fish fries on Friday. So we'll see more about and talk more about that in a second. But I'm going to bring on my special guest from Niagara Falls, New York, former Buffalo lieutenant from the Buffalo Police Department. I believe in the 90s, maybe almost 2000. We'll find out. And he's also a current priest at St. George Orthodox Church in Niagara Falls. And welcome, Kevin, or Reverend Father Raphael Kevin Barberg is in the house. How you doing, sir?
I'm great, cuz. How are you?
I'm excellent, thank you. So he called me cuz, and I didn't really explain what how I'm tied into him. He actually married one of my cousins. My cousin's Kelly, who's also part of the parish in St. George in Niagara Falls. Kelly's father and my mother are brother and sister. And he married into the family, and so now we're cousins. So
good or ill?
Or cousins, if you're in the South. So, cuz. So anyways, Raphael, I'll call you Raphael. I'm not used to calling you. I'm not used to calling you formally, only because you had that relationship over time, and I wasn't here when you were a Buffalo cop, so I would never have called you officer in my life, unless you pulled me over. But we'll get into that in a second. I want to open it up real quick for you to kind of introduce yourself, as far as your role in the faith, and then we'll go backtrack. We'll do a couple Buffalo cop stories, if you will. Go ahead.
Yeah, for sure. I'm a priest and pastor in the Orthodox Church, which is a family of churches that have ancient origins. The Greek Orthodox, Russian Orthodox, Serbian, Bulgarian. My particular family is the Antiochian Orthodox Church, which is my parish here was settled by mainly people from Lebanon and Syria. And that's the ancient city of Antioch, where the book of Acts records that they were first called Christians. So, so that's what I am. We have a parish here in Niagara Falls. It'll be almost 100 years in just a couple years from now. Lebanese, mainly immigrants, came and brought their faith with them. And here we are. I was able to come into Orthodoxy in the early 90s, and as when I was a police officer, before I married your lovely cousin, and never thought in my wildest dreams that I'd end up back here as the pastor. But God's ways are something different.
So now we'll backtrack now from before you were ordained and how you transitioned to take over as pastor or installed. I'm not sure how the right word to use.
All that's
Um,
good.
okay, so you'll correct me if I'm wrong in any way of shape or form. But real quick, ShawnPGreene.com. You can go to Facebook page. That's the new show Facebook page, and you go to the podcast to watch it live or watch it later because we'll have a YouTube playlist. We're currently live on YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter, and you can always go back, go to ShawnPGreene.com and check out those links. So, and if you have any comments, you want to call, this is the phone number right now on the screen, 716-253-1870. Okay, so let's get back into in the past here. Actually, let me tell the story from my perspective first on how I met you. Back in the 1980s, I was kind of like not really sure of who I was. I was in a private school up until 1986, which was a very small school. It's called the Harvesters Christian School at the time. And I was the only person in grade 4th through 8th. So I finished that last span from 2nd to 8th grade in that school and transitioned to Allendale Junior, which was a suburb of Buffalo in West Seneca. And I did my 9th grade year in Allendale Junior, and then eventually went to West Seneca West for my last 3 years in high school, graduating in '89. So while I was a youth, I started, I kind of veered away from going. I wanted something different. Our church was really small, so we didn't really have a whole lot going on. The Full Gospel Tabernacle, which is a church in Orchard Park, not too far from the Buffalo Bills Stadium. I just started riding my bike there from where I lived. And it's a couple miles down the road, but I just needed something different. I wanted to do something that I wanted to do, like be a part of people my own age group that was in the faith. So to me, that was the only thing that I really knew outside of that small church I was going to. And I went to Center Row Baptist Church, by the way, my K and first grades. So that was I was in this private school world for all that time, going to the public school. But I actually was introduced to going to a church in a youth group by my cousin Kelly. She invited me to go, and I became part of some of the things. So like Royal Rangers was one thing. It's like a Boy Scouts type thing for the Assembly of God churches. So I started doing Royal Rangers. Then I started attending youth group meetings, and little by little, I started, meeting different people there. At any rate, Kevin at the time was a youth leader. I think he was a youth maybe before I even got there. I don't know. I don't know that history. But you were also doing worship at, kind of like helping out with the youth leaders. And so I don't know really what your role was. I just knew that you played guitar there sometimes. Very talented musician. I was like, wow, okay, this is cool. It's kind of hip. You know what I mean? It's something. I was a big U2 fan. When I found out he was a U2 fan, I was like, okay, great. This guy's pretty cool.
None of us compare to David Lee Bemis, though.
Dave Bemis, yeah, he's a super fan of U2 he's in Florida now, but his father was associate pastor there. So you take me through, sometimes it will pause. You take me through getting to Full Gospel Tabernacle as a leader. How did that kind of inspire you to be in that kind of a role, if you will?
Yeah, so as you're talking, I'm trying to remember what year was it about when you started?
I would say 85, right when the Petra's Beat the System tour was around, maybe a little bit before that.
Yeah, so I first remember you, and I was wondering if you're going to mention that you dated my little sister for a little bit.
I didn't want to mention that because, could be bad blood in that family about that. So
not at all.
I wasn't really a good dater back in those days. So let's
Who
just put it that
was,
way.
right?
Yeah.
So we have no, you and my sister, you can figure out, but from our perspective, we have
Okay.
no bad report about anything about you. But that was, I remember the cute little guy with the Hawaiian shirt on. That was my remembrance of.
Cool.
So yeah, I was eventually. So I probably was in college when in '85. So I was around a bit, but I had started helping. Was Mike still in charge of you? I think he was, right?
Mike Palahati,
Yeah,
he's the late Mike
late,
Palahati.
great
Yes.
Mike Palahati.
He
Yeah,
was fun. He was a great guy.
yeah, huge influence on my life. And so I started helping out because I played guitar and led worship, and then occasionally give me the opportunity to speak as well. And I really enjoyed that. And then getting to know all you guys, even though I was older, trying to live a holy life as a young policeman. Eventually, it was great to be still involved with the tab and young people, and I'm trying to, when you're a leader, you're held a little more accountable, and that's helpful in you if you want to. It wasn't perfect. It didn't keep me from straying and having my issues, believe me, but I do think that it was helpful in trying to live. So I highly recommend it if you're struggling, or you're a young person or something, and you want to live a good Christ-like life. One of the best things you can do is try to get involved somehow and realize that other people look to you, and so that will affect the choices you make when sort of like parenting does as well. But so anyway, eventually our friend Mike Caputi, who was one of the guys who started the Kingdom Bound festival, he'd started a college career ministry, and then I got involved with him in starting that out. Did you ever participate, or you were probably in Florida or something when we did Club Mana?
Well, I left for the Navy in '89, and I
In the
left
Navy, right?
then, and from the Navy, I was in Florida for 12 years. So yeah, whatever happened after the summer of '89, I was not involved in anything.
Yeah. So we had a really nice, Mike being a professional musician would get some really good players to come out for praise and worship band. And so I got to participate more than lead in this case, because while I play some guitar and sing a little, I'm not the class of musicians that Mike was able to bring in. And but I learned a lot by being in that band and meeting great guys like Steve Camilleri and Bobby Jones and Paul. What's Paul's last? Paul Camilleri. No, I said Steve Camilleri. What's Paul's last? Paul Campola. No. Anyway.
When you're above a certain age, it's okay to not know everything.
Yeah, but I had that problem.
Remember,
so don't let the great beard.
They do have apps for that on your phone now, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, I need all the help I can get. So it was. So I've always been involved with ministry of some sort. I enjoyed learning about the scriptures and about the Christian faith. And I also enjoyed, for many reasons, helping others with their own personal journey. I mean, probably mainly selfishly, as I say, because I found that doing that helps me. If you want to learn something really well, then teach it, because then you can't. People are going to people ask you questions, and you're like, oh, I don't really know. So you got to really study things, so you really know. I'm teaching a course at NU, first time ever doing like an academic, teaching in an academic session, even though I've done lots of teachings, and it's challenging, but I feel like I'm really growing. And so spiritually, I really think that's important. It doesn't mean you need to be a pastor or be up at the front or something, but that you get involved and you live your life in Christ and you help others. I mean, AA has that same principle. I've got good friends who are, in Alcoholics Anonymous and whatever, and to keep themselves sober, they're helping other people. So that's just a spiritual principle, I think. So in my life, I've been a minister and eventually transferred over into Orthodoxy, and it certainly has nothing to do with my own personal holiness or great leadership or anything like that. It's somebody who's just struggling to acquire the kingdom of God, and this is one of the means that has helped me.
Well, I also noticed too, you went to University at Buffalo, which I just graduated from.
Yes, and I have not touched base to congratulate you on that. That's awesome.
Thank you very much. Yep, not bad. I always do hashtag old school when I talk about it.
How old were you when you got your degree?
50.
So you just turned 50, got your degree at 50. So you beat me then, because I was like 46 or something, I think, when I finished my degree, my bachelor's.
Nice.
So
Very
hey,
cool.
all of you out there that have never finished your degree, you know,
I did have an associate's degree, mind you, in Florida, but New York State's a little bit difficult, more difficult with the transferring of credits out of state. So it made me take more than I wanted to.
yeah.
So the bachelor took a little bit longer than expected, but my goal was to at least by 50 have this bachelor's degree that I've been working on for around about 25 years now.
That's
So
awesome.
I feel like Van Wilder, you know what I mean? Just try my best for forever. So you were at University of Buffalo. What were you taking though? And that was right during the time I was at West Seneca West too, by the way.
Yeah. Okay, so when you first got to know me at the tab there, I graduated from Orchard Park High School in '84 and went to RIT for about a year and a half.
Okay.
Rochester Institute of Technology, for those of you not from the Western New York area. Started off with physics, and then started a problem of changing my major like every semester and trying to find myself, as you mentioned.
Yep.
Yourself. And then when my family split up, my dad had many issues, and my folks' marriage split up, and I needed to come home to support my mom. And plus, not knowing what I was doing, I was wasting all kinds of money in an expensive school. And so I came back to Buffalo and started at UB. Psychology was what I was studying at UB.
How to manipulate people, right?
True. Or how to resist being manipulated too.
It's a Dale Carnegie concept, but it's an undertone of that degree. Anyways, so yeah, so psychology was kind of like you were just trying to how to understand people. It wasn't really about people as a whole, but individually. So that's kind of what psychology is versus sociology or something to that effect. So
I was a sociology major too at some point.
Were you? But how did this benefit you? In the future, we'll talk about your career path in a second.
Yeah, I think all of it's benefited me, and that which is part of my problem is I love so much of the world. Starting out with physics, I don't have the patience and the steadfastness and the ability to focus attention so well on like doing labs and shooting ball bearings off a table relentlessly for an hour and tracking all that data. That just wasn't going to work with me, even though I love the whole idea. I've studied, quantum physics, and I still, but I benefited from getting that science background and, helping to cut through, like so much of the issues in this day and age have been science related. I mean, the whole COVID thing and how to combat it and whatever. So being able to read scientific studies and realizing how the scientific method works and all that has been helpful to me as I lead a flock, as I lead a family, and trying to figure out for myself. Psychology and sociology, of course, the social studies, the humanities, and all that stuff has helped me, just because I do love people. I love people more than ideas or things, right? So if I had taken that approach, I probably would have gone into something like that sooner rather than later. But I do like ideas. I do love philosophy, and I do like things. I do still enjoy science. So, but obviously psychology, the study of myself, my fellow human being, how we tick, has been a part of my drive and something that's been very helpful in pastoring people. So being a dad and being a guy trying to get through the world.
So we'll talk about the family dynamics in a minute. I was kind of doing a little research on it. There was a Colin Barberg that was ordained a Roman Catholic priest, and I don't think that was a related person.
Really? Colin Barberg?
I don't know the different middle name, though, I'm sure.
Yeah. I'll have to tell him these.
Colin, of course, is
covered them.
Colin is the oldest of his family, but oldest children of his family. So let's get now prior to entering the police force. And what year was that you entered the Buffalo Police Force?
Yeah. So with being back home, being a poor student, not having, and that's a big part of what my issues were. Is I coasted through high school getting B's without lifting a book and without doing anything, and so can't do that in college. So
No.
so I struggled. That had a big part of it, and then of course my family dynamics, my folks splitting up, and then back in Buffalo. I'm going to UB, studying psychology or sociology. I'm not knowing why am I even doing this? I'm not going to be a psychologist. What am I supposed to do here? My mother mentions to me one day, the Buffalo police are holding an exam on, next month on a Saturday or something. You should just go down and take the test or whatever. I said, I never really wanted to be a cop. Although, like when you're young, we all back at least then we played cops and robbers a lot and watched Starsky and Hutch and other shows like that. T.J. Hooker.
And I didn't like T.J. Hooker too much. I only like watching what's her name, Heather Locklear.
Heather Locklear, right? Yeah,
that was it.
Yeah, they probably had a bigger following on that show because of her, but
absolutely.
But then, I said though, you know what? That's a noble profession, and the cops I know in my life are great people. I'll give it a try, see what happens. So I went down, and I think there were, the brain thing again over the years, is it 3,000 or 6,000? But there was at least 3,000 people that took that test that day, and because of hiring quotas or whatever, I had to place high and I placed, like 23 or something, one of those Saturday mornings where you just filled in all the right boxes. And so I got hired in 1988. And 70th basic class, we just celebrated our anniversary on March 1st. So 88 to, I guess that would be
it's 24 years.
24 years.
34.
No, it's more than that, 34, yeah. Because I did my 20 and I've been out 14 years, I guess. So
you did a full 20. And you moved up the ladder, so to speak. So basically, before that, what was your thinking before doing this test? What career path did you see yourself in, or what did you see yourself trying to do? Before that whole process.
I really had no idea. I had no clue what I really wanted to do in life. Big part of me wanted to move. I have a family that owns a big 5,000 acre ranch in Meeteetse, Wyoming, and I thought maybe I'll go and be a cowboy.
There you go.
Serious, and I was serious about that. And as you know, we raised horses growing up, and I thought maybe I'd get horse training or something. But it's unless you're super good or something, you can't make a living, support a family, or doing anything like that. So I had no clue. But when she said that, I said, okay, that sounds good. That could be something I could do till I figure myself out. And so it worked. It clicked, and I'm very grateful for it. And I wasn't the best cop out there. My platoon mates will agree with that notion. But
well, on that note, I did do a little bit of research and some old Buffalo news stories. With your name in it. While you were a lieutenant,
and got pushed off the bridge. When I was a lieutenant. Yeah.
One of them is about the email scandals.
Yes. Thanks for bringing that up.
I had to.
Amazing.
I got to bring it up, man. No, you can't sweep it all under the rug.
Hard-nosed reporting, the hard-nosed journalism you want to do there.
Oh yeah, you know how it is.
Well, here's the thing, though. It's like I had a lawsuit against the city of Buffalo because of misinformation that was put out to the news about that story.
Yeah.
And then
you did make a statement. They reported that it was not unethical emails. Just it wasn't personal business. It was personal business, not unethical, and you were recused of any kind of wrongdoing or anything.
Yeah.
It was just okay, you're right. I should keep all my emails professional. That's kind of what the end result of that issue.
Yeah, well,
Understood.
it was sort of like okay, so the headline was how many were there now? 6 or 7? I think it was 7 high-ranking police officials and lieutenants and detectives. I think there were a couple captains, but nobody's high-ranking. Uh,
Yeah.
Middle ranking maybe. It was all this hype, right?
Sure.
Suspended for sending receiving racist emails. Okay.
Right. Which
Um,
you again were recused of.
Right, exactly. And that's page A1.
Hmm.
The photos on it. I remember going to the dentist like that day and sitting, look, the receptionist sitting there holding the paper, and it was like, it was a really bad time in my
Hey,
life.
this guy looks familiar.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see if we can drill something today.
And as we'll continue to highlight, right? I was recused of any wrongdoing in
Yes.
this.
Yes.
I mean, I can admit to wrongdoing that I was fooling around on the new internet thing, and things were
Right.
misconstrued and whatever. And so I deserve to have my face, my family name, and everything put in the newspaper.
It was in 1994 that the incident occurred, and that's kind of when Yahoo and everybody else was launching email services and all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
95 is when they were going through the process of getting you, reporting it and getting your name cleared of all that
Yeah,
stuff.
newly married and all this stuff. So it was
A lot of stress, I can imagine.
yeah, big time stress. And that was
Yeah.
very hurtful too, that
Sure.
my department, instead of trying to make justice, and I can't stand by what like everybody said in their emails, but there
Sure.
were some that
There was somebody that was actually not still, it was an ongoing, I didn't know the result, but yeah, there were still people that actually did unethical and really bad, because today, if it was flagged, that was it. You're canceled. You
right.
would have been canceled if it was
Oh my
today,
God. Yeah. Well,
regardless.
I had a classmate of mine had run for parish council, ran for a common council.
Mm.
And we got along great in the academy, but he's there grandstanding in his district that we all got to be fired and whatever, and without even like taking the time to talk to me, because I thought we were friends. Then secondly, really investigating to see what it was that I was, and some of the other guys too, that we were accused of, and what the evidence was. No, it's we've all got to be fired. And when if you my perspective is, and if you take, I think anybody, if you take a step back from the whole thing, it was a new commissioner who wanted to establish himself as a law and order type guy and whatever, and information was leaked. You don't take care of things in your own house. So, well, first of all, that's a sign of weakness if you don't know how to take care of things in your own house. And then second, then you're going to leak it and make it into something that it wasn't. So a number of us hired an attorney. And so it was almost worth it to sit in that room with the high-ranking commissioners and chiefs in my department, seeing them all sweat bullets as our attorney Paul Cambria, well known in the Buffalo, New York area for one of the things he defended was Larry Flint of Hustler fame. I'm not proud of that connection, but I'm just saying the kind of prestige he has and influence and power as an attorney did. So having them all sweat, realizing how badly they screwed up on that. So we got written apologies. I get all the time off I had is suspended, and I got paid for, so it was a paid vacation. Although it was no vacation when you're sitting there in a suspended state. Having all this. So all the radio talk shows were all going nuts about this and everything. And but as I have to repeat over and over again, we were cleared of all wrongdoing.
Yes.
But unfortunately, this is on page C9 of the Buffalo News and not page A1.
Right.
But if you do your research and you find that story, then you can also find that the supplement to the story. So yeah, it was a dark time of my life.
I don't want to stay there on that.
No, we do not.
I just wanted to bring it up. It didn't have to go this far. But yeah, he's recused back in 1995, or that era, 94.
I do have to say you got
Go ahead.
positive, but
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
do have to say that I was just like I was saying, you find out who your friends are, and people, start steering away from you. But among my African American and my white and Hispanic colleagues and everything, I mean the amount of support. We had a couple fundraisers to pay for our attorney, and they just came out of the woodwork, and they were just because
Because they
when
knew
people
you.
know
They
you,
worked with you. They knew you.
they support you and whatever.
Yeah.
So in that hand, it became a really super positive thing, and that's what I focus on: the support and love I got from my fellow coppers, and the fact that I was cleared of any wrongdoing, and then of course my family, So anyway, so yes,
Very
that was the dark spot in my career. Of course, to go along with all the times that I dealt with lots of violence and bad things and have to carry that around in my head for the rest of my life.
yes.
The things that I've seen and experienced and seen human beings do to other human beings. But all in all, it was a good career that I'm proud of, and it's a noble profession and wonderful human beings that do it. Okay, again, can't vouch for everyone, and take a cross cut of any group of people in the world, and you're going to find some bad apples, and we certainly have had ours that make the rest of us look horrible. But I'm very proud of the work that at least we did in my generation in the city of Buffalo. St. Paul says in Romans, I think it's in chapter 13, that the ruler, that's what a police officer is, a ruler enforcing the rules in the city, is a minister of God for good. So he therefore does not bear the sword in vain, or the Glock 17 in vain, but he's a minister for God for good. So I always considered it that way. That and I wasn't always the best at that. I'm lazy. I'm judgmental. I'm all the bad things that everybody struggles with. But I knew that I was going to be held accountable for what I did, and I tried to to help people in their situations. And I was given great examples by some of the cops I work with, the way they selflessly served their neighbor in all kinds of horrible situations. So yeah, so yes, I'm pretty proud of the occupation I did, and I'm proud of law enforcement in general.
So, and you were also, well, the end of your career, you were in an accident and investigation unit. I was just looking on your LinkedIn account profile, um, 20 years in. And so tell me, would this be like the worst scenarios, or was it more like the other investigating, um, not accidents, but homicide or any other incidents? What kind of stuck with you the most over the years?
Yeah, it was certainly in the accident investigation unit. So the normal patrol officers out there in the districts handle you get an offender bender on your way into work, and
Yep.
all this stuff. The majority of the accidents are fender benders and property damage only, PDOs, and thank God. But serious physical injury, fatalities, city involved, right? The guys in my office, in my unit, guys and gals, guys generically, the officers would handle that. And so and I was their support and backup, and sometimes if there was no one else available, I would handle the accident. So the serious physical injury, and especially the fatality, fatal motor vehicle accidents can be horrific.
Yep.
And so some of that's there. I didn't fortunately have to do lots of investigation, being the leader of the unit. But as a patrolman, I worked on the east. Well, as a patrolman, as a patrol lieutenant, I worked on the east side of Buffalo. And in the early '90s, we had all kinds of gang warfare going on. The notorious Sly Greene that we were looking for.
Not related. Not related.
Thought I threw that out there. Your cousin? No.
Right.
So yeah, there was I've seen my share of stuff.
So you do have a sympathy, empathy, relatability, even for war veterans, of the armed forces. I know your brother was also in the Navy, like I was.
Yeah.
I didn't see combat hand to hand, so to speak. But I know that now that you're leader of a congregation, you'll have people who have experienced things that um, that caused or gave a little PTSD, or even physical um, traumatic brain injury, that type of thing. So, we'll get into your ministry in a second, but and I know because of your experience and you see these things every day that there's a relatability towards people who serve, especially in first responders or military.
Yeah, indeed. Trauma is a real thing. When you experience trauma, and degrees of trauma. Just because you weren't the one shot, or wasn't your family member shot, by virtue of you showing up on that scene in your role as an EMT, firefighter, cop, chaplain, whatever. You experience some secondhand trauma. People that have a family member that were involved in something. So certainly, the trauma I experienced as a cop on the street, there's a certain degree that my wife, not so much my children, because by the time they came around, I was still in the law enforcement. But I ran a unit. I wasn't suffering from that much trauma, or, oh, I can't believe what went on tonight, that kind of thing. But that causes trauma when you love somebody and they're traumatized.
Mm-hmm.
And trauma does disrupt our normal functioning cognitively in our brain, and it affects us physically in so many ways. So yeah, that's something that since my time, we had a really bad shooting when I was a patrol officer in precinct 16 at the time. Precincts are gone in favor, smaller. We had 14 precincts at the time, and the neighborhood police department, as it used to be, has been replaced by these monstrous districts. That's another story if you want me to get into that some other time. But
Yeah, sure.
you can get Commissioner Joe Gramalia on here. You can talk to him about that kind of stuff.
Hopefully, I mean he's pretty busy right now with,
Sure.
especially
Yeah,
with the
definitely.
McKinley High School issue. If you're
Yeah,
local, you'll
sure.
know what I'm talking about. But um, all right, so I don't want to stop you, but I do want to kind of figure out while you're a cop. Okay, this is from '88 is when you started after the test, or you start a little bit later.
So I must have taken the test in the summer or fall, summer or, or early fall of '87.
'87, okay,
Yeah,
and then you're on the force in March of '88.
yeah,
Okay, and then from that point until you became a deacon in 2001,
yeah. So
when did you actually, or where were you going before you led up to being a deacon at the Antiochian Archdiocese, which is the
yeah,
same church you're pastor now, right?
right.
Okay,
Yeah. So
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 what led up to being a deacon? That's what I want to
well,
know.
there's a big spiritual journey obviously behind that,
Sure.
coinciding with my police work and everything. And you knew me, we knew each other at the Full Gospel Tabernacle, and then I kind of moved on to different things. I didn't really do a lot of church hopping. First of all, I'm an introvert, even though I'm a leader of a congregation, and people are sometimes surprised. uh,
And you got a
um,
large family.
yeah, which
Yeah.
makes introversion even more but I really am. I'm introverted. So any of you that have, like, trying to find a church for yourself, the whole idea of walking into a church and everybody's so excited that you're there, and
Hmm.
stay for a coffee hour and this and that, and hey, you could sing in the choir. It's like, oh, I'm just visiting. I'm just, that whole idea. So I wanted to have all my theological ducks in a row. So I
Hmm.
didn't do a lot of like shopping around experientially. I did a lot of reading. There was a time when I didn't go to church anywhere for about a year, which was easy to do when you're a third shift cop, working all night. And I used to go to church. And then once I got my ducks in a row and started going to church again, I was still working midnights, and I would stay up when you care about.
What
The
would be considered third shift?
Well, okay, so midnight shift. It depends on how you.
Okay.
So for us, that was actually first shift. We call it. But,
Hmm.
days would be second shift, and afternoons third. But I know factories or whatever have different terminologies. So I
Hmm.
think third shift is pretty commonly overnight. Maybe I'm wrong. Somebody can correct me. But midnight shift. So most of my career I was on midnights until being married for a few years. And so anyway, so I stayed home, but I tried to honor the Sabbath day, which of course Christians moved to Sunday in honor of the Lord's resurrection. So I try to always honor Sunday, even if I didn't go to church, by reading the scriptures, spending time in prayer. And one of my prayers was, Lord, help me to find a faith for my people, because while I wasn't yet married and never really had a good long-term girlfriend, or anything like that, I knew I wanted to be married. I knew I wanted to have a family, and I didn't want to be dragging people around church shopping. So I wanted to have this all, so I prayed to the Lord, and I asked him for help and direction. And then I also started studying church history. Okay. I knew, the charismatics, pretty much started in, Azusa Street, and is a phenomenon coming out of, the Methodist revival movements of the, 19th century. So where did they come from, And so I started studying Protestantism, and early on, my family were Baptists. And so I started the Baptist movement, and when I was a kid, there were little booklets talking about, the Trail of Blood Church, how Baptists were through history. There were all these different, and equating them with Waldensians and others that my 55-year-old brain isn't remembering it now. But when I did my homework, I researched all of them. No, those aren't Baptists, not even close. In fact, how could you associate with many of them? They were heretical. They had some misguided notion of actually who Jesus was, something short of the whole incarnational 100% God, 100% man, and that kind of thing. So I did a lot of history, and then I started studying from the book of Acts. Well, then what happened to the next generation? Started reading literature from what's known as the Apostolic Fathers, the Saint Ignatius, Saint Clement, and all these other people that wrote that they had the words of the apostles still ringing in their ears when they were leading Christian flocks. And so all of my journeying, and without getting too deeply into all that, ended up me thinking I need to get into something sacramental, liturgical, but not knowing. I didn't know anything about Orthodoxy. I mean, this is pre-internet, and I thought I was going to become Roman Catholic, and for different reasons, I just couldn't cross that threshold. One day, we're at Club Manna, Mike Caputi's college career group, and a couple people that I recognized came in. My friend Chris Dale, Steve Petrazik. Steve was sort of like a mentor to me when I was dabbling with Calvinism. And what are you guys doing? I hadn't seen them in a while. Oh, don't get any ideas. We're just here to meet women. And I'm like, oh, well, I can honor that. I respect that, But they asked me what I'm doing. I said, well, I'm looking for something. I'm helping Mike out with this ministry, but eventually I've got to get someplace where I feel like I can, live the rest of my life, raise a family. Oh, well, that's interesting. We're going to be chrismated into the Orthodox Church, next month. I'm like, what are you talking about? And I remembered a newspaper article in the religious section about a group of evangelicals that had committed to Orthodoxy. And so I came and visited. My friend Christopher was waiting for me the one Sunday. I came and visited, and there's a story about time's short. I won't get into this story. So, but I had a mystical experience, and from that moment I knew I was going to be Orthodox. I knew I was going to serve that altar, and I thought that was valid. That came true when I was a deacon there for a number of years, even as I was a cop. So you kind of like while you're a cop, you were transitioning into this Eastern Orthodox sect of Christianity, if you will. Yeah, I would say I was struggling as a cop because you're confronted with all this negative stuff, and I wasn't becoming a better person. I was becoming a worse of a person. I started drinking a lot and going out with the guys, and just trying to sort this stuff out. And I needed some tools in my toolbox that would really help me out. And that's what I feel like I got in Orthodoxy is, it's not a judgment on anyone else in any other faith. And my family, as you know, are very devout evangelicals and charismatics and going on. And I love them very, very much and honor them. And they're all better Christians than me. But for me, I had to have this, right? So
Yep.
that's that's sort of how I came to Orthodoxy. And once I became Orthodox, I knew I wanted to serve. Again, I always felt that I needed to serve and to lead, to help with my own salvation. And so I started studying to be a deacon. And so then in 2001, I was ordained a deacon right before 9/11 happened, and went and ministered
Wow.
in New York City after, in the aftermath there. And
How big of of timing was that? To have, I'll put that up there real quick. How big of a timing was that to be ready, or at least beginning to be equipped to help even your own people? In the Western New York area,
yeah,
Buffalo firefighters, anybody who went out to New York City to help, but anybody that's from New York that came, that experienced that firsthand. Um, how great was that to have been prepared for that?
yeah. In one sense, you don't feel prepared. None of us are prepared for these horrible tragedies, But it's the way it happened was, I'm sitting at my desk I was at the court liaison lieutenant there at the time, and the International Orthodox Christian Charities started, asking for help to have a relief effort. They were looking for funds at that point mainly, but I sent an email back to them and said, "Hey, I'm a police lieutenant, recently ordained deacon. Is there any way I can help?" And I think I hit send, and my phone rang. "When can you be in New York?" And
That
so
wasn't the unethical email, by the way, right?
that wasn't the unethical. So yeah, so
Go
I
ahead. Sorry.
I went, used my own leave and went down to New York for about 10 days, and helping the firemen, and having the badge, and then wearing the collar as I was wearing then, and whatever that.
Hmm.
It's interesting how cops and soldiers are different. The cops would be like, "Oh, Father, we need you coming in here," instantly just judging who I was or whatever by how I dressed, which is an important lesson too. And so I access to ground zero, no problem. You go 2 blocks over where the Army, National Guard, or whoever was roadblock. No, we have orders. Nobody goes past here. And I go, but I'm a police officer. I was ministering down there all day. Nope, nobody goes past her. So you go down 2 blocks later, and the cops, same thing. "Oh, come on, we need you."
Yep.
So we got to do a lot. I'm not sure how much I was used there. I must be. People that I were with, said they were so thankful for my presence there. But you just like, what can you do? How do you help people in this situation? But I learned a lot. I've learned a lot that you show up. You just show up sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's the little things you do when people are grieving, when people are in trauma and stress. They can't even think sometimes about feeding themselves, or taking time for personal hygiene or this. So you can take care of things for them. It's like, you know what? Why don't you go brush your teeth? If you had a chance to brush your teeth, why don't you go brush your teeth? Oh yeah. And while you're doing that, I'm going to clean up the kitchen here for you. Or you just learn to be present and take care of the small details. You don't push your religion on them, although you offer, as a spiritual person, I believe in prayer. The place was crawling with Scientologists, right? I don't know that people realize that. They're all over the place. And of course, they're taking advantage of the situation to try to get their hooks into people, to become part of their abusive.
Was Tom Cruise there?
I didn't see Tom Cruise, but it wasn't surprising.
Or who's the other one? Saturday Night Fever guy. What's his name?
John Travolta.
John Travolta. Yes.
Maybe they were, and I don't want to judge them either. But I was like, I'm not here to make people Orthodox. I'm not even here to make them Christians. Of course, I'm always looking for the opportunity for people that have a heart open when the time is right to lead them to the Lord. But you don't take advantage of people in their distress to push your faith on them. And so you just go to serve, and bringing it back to our own people here, that's affected me in how I do ministry. Back in the police department, having conversations with people, and a good sizable group went down from Buffalo, from the police department, that I had more contact with, and we shared stories. I was able to listen to them, and some cases give perspective, and but you don't know how the Lord used you. You just have to make yourself available and be present.
Well,
That's the
much
main.
like just being a father, you got to be present for your
Exactly.
children. So now you have what, 5 children right now?
Yes, sir. We got
Okay,
five
and
and
that's pretty much
2.5.
it then, right?
Well, you can ask your cousin about that. I think that's it. Nathaniel's 11, so I don't think.
Yeah. Okay. Shout out to Kelly Lynn, my cousin, Kelly Lynn Barberg, by the way.
The beautiful saintly
She
beautiful
she
family.
she's a fantastic woman, and she's got so much love for people. And she's always had that. Always personable, very talented photographer. What else can I say about Kelly? I mean, there's she's amazing. She's funny, and she does have a pretty tough side to her as well. And that's part of
Does
the
indeed.
upbringing. But I love her, man. She's the best. So you have a family of 7 of you, which is the perfect number, right?
There you
Possibly.
go. Never thought of it that way.
The oldest one is what right now? Colin.
So Colin will be 25 this summer, if you can believe it.
25. Wow.
Yeah.
And the youngest is 11. So you got a nice range there. Different, almost different generations, really, amongst all 5 of them. Um, are any of them now? They've been along the journey with you in once you retired in 2008, which was probably when Colin was what, 5 at the time. I don't even. I'm trying to do the
No,
math. I'm
he
not
was
doing good.
older. So 2008. What did
12.
I say? I've been out about 14 years. So he would have been like just a preteen. I think he would have been like 12, 13 maybe. When we
Okay,
went to
12 years
seminary.
old, roughly.
Yeah.
Okay, but all your children have been on this journey with you, not just while you were, not all of them, but up until 2008. The ones that were here, Hannah is one of them
Yep.
that was with you at the time. Mary Kate, Luke, and who am I forgetting?
Nathaniel.
Nathaniel, the youngest, right? Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know why I forgot his name all the time. Please forgive me, Nathaniel. You're great. You're a great kid. Um, so they've been on this journey from you transitioning from a Buffalo cop to being a leader in the Orthodox Church. Not only now you're the pastor of this fellowship in Niagara Falls, but you are you have a history of being assigned different places as
Yeah.
well. And you've been in Maryland, a couple places. You've been in Oklahoma City most recently before coming back here, 2018. But you were also downstate when I was in Orange County, New York, Middletown. I lived down there, and I never got to see you. And you were just across the bridge of the Hudson River in
Yeah.
Westchester County. I don't know. I think we tried maybe one time to hook up, and it just never worked out.
That's a pattern for us. I mean, we both
Yeah,
live in the same city now, right? And we've seen each other since we moved back.
well, one thing that tied us together this past summer was our Christian Film Festival that I host.
That's right. I saw you this summer. That's
That's
right.
right. So that past summer, we have a little bridge there,
Yes.
with a film called Man of God. It featured Mickey Rourke, which is did they just replayed that on the 1st of March, or is it coming up?
No, March 21st, I think
March twenty
nationwide
first.
they'll be playing it,
It's a
and we're
special
great.
day too, right? S-
Yeah.
Okay,
Uh,
yes.
March 21st special day.
It's like a special occasion within the Orthodox Church, if I'm not mistaken. But
Um.
anyways, they wanted to release it during this time of year for one
Yeah.
night only, all over the country.
Yeah.
So it's really exciting, and we got 3 movie theaters that will be screening that. So that's kind of like how we tied in. We'll get back to that in a second. I just want to get more into your journey from the diocese in Buffalo. Not a diocese. Is it called a diocese
So
or
just an individual church we call a parish,
a parish?
and
I'm
then
sorry.
and then a group of them is a diocese.
So you started off your journey from Niagara Falls, and you've actually been around the world visiting different places as well. But as a leader, where have you and your family um, moved around towards, and what was your role in these various places?
Yeah. So in 2008, as you said, I retired from the police department. Well, and to touch on what you were saying, like about my children. So Colin and Hannah were born when I was ordained a deacon, which was 2001, right before 9/11. So Colin would have been about 3 or 4. So I wonder if he remembers that or not. Hannah was, only a couple years old, so she probably So for practical purposes, none of them never remember their father wasn't a minister of some sort. Um, so in 2008, I retired, and so Colin would have been like 11, 12, probably about Nathaniel's age now. And Hannah was 8 or something, and Luke and Mary Kate were babies. We went to your saintly cousin agreed to sell her dream home there that we had in DeVoe, in the neighborhood of DeVoe in Niagara Falls. And we packed up our things, reduced a lot of what we owned, some of which I regret now as my kids are musicians. I had a great PV amp and a whole bunch of records, LPs that we didn't see right to carry around with us. And had I known the revival in
Vinyl, yeah,
going on, revival of playing vinyl,
yeah.
I would have hung on to those. Um, anyway, whatever's going on, there's
Is there a loop of some sort?
yeah, there's a loop somewhere. Check going. You're gone.
Yeah,
No.
you're in.
All right, I'll just ignore it.
I can hear it clear on this end, so we're good.
Okay. So we moved off to New York City to St. Vladimir's Orthodox Theological Seminary, where I studied for 3 years. I wanted to remain a deacon. I loved being a deacon. It was the greatest thing. You get to serve the services, help people with their spiritual life, and do all kinds of stuff, but without the heavy burden of confession and leading a parish and all this stuff. I was hoping maybe to become a bishop's deacon or, be a teacher or something. But God had other plans. So after 2 years, I was ordained as a priest, which was great because I got to spend my 3rd year as a seminary priest, learning how to be a priest. And then I was assigned to a mission parish in Maryland, Westminster, Maryland area. So we were there for 5 years, and we loved it. Had a great community there, but financially it was very difficult for us. So I'd asked to transfer to some place where hopefully we could make ends meet and heal our wounds, our financial wounds that we were suffering, and ended up in Oklahoma City as the second priest at a very large parish, very prosperous and generous congregation, and was happy to have stayed there as an assistant for the rest of my life. Didn't want to move again, didn't want to do that to my family. But then over Christmas in 2017 into 2018, New Year's of 2018, got the call from our archdiocese headquarters that they were sending me to my home parish in Niagara Falls. And I was like, are you asking me if we want to go to her? Oh, no, we're not asking you. And I said, well, you do know that we moved a lot. Yes. And his eminence, our archbishop, knows that you're a family man and that you might dig your heels. And if so, we will relent, but your home parish won't be open, but you will be transferred the next few years. We can't afford to have a good seasoned priest. Seasoned, probably more emphasis than on good, but being, as an assistant here.
Now, real quick, is that typical within not just Orthodox churches, but with other like hierarchical denominations to have people assign places either with or without their consent? Is that typical? Because I maybe I'm ignorant, because I personally I'm going to a non-denominational, and we're just the one unit. So is that typical to be assigned and then
yeah. So
accepting,
depending on what
denying,
kind
or
of church
whatever?
you go to, and the polity, the ecclesiology of the church, the understanding of how the church is to be governed, it's different. Your non-denominational church probably was like the Baptist churches I grew in, that was very congregational. Carol Greene, hey Aunt Carol, good to see you or hear from you. So we so I remember that the pastor had to be called by the congregation. So there's advantages of that, in that you have a lot of say in who's coming to lead your flock, right? The disadvantage is it's hard on the pastor and his family, because you serve at the whim of the parish, and if they get mad at you, then you might be off without a job or having to move or something. And so, of course, if you're doing your job right as a pastor, sometimes your flock's mad at you, because it's your job, if they are
Yeah.
not
Sheep
listening
bite,
to
right?
the Lord, yeah, it's your job to say, no, this ain't right, that you are not living correctly, or this isn't the way we're going to do things here, and so anyway, different churches are from congregational all the way to a hierarchical model, where you're under obedience, in my position, where you go where you're sent. So you'd have to check with the individual churches, where, of course, Catholic, and of course their clergy are celibate. So there's you don't have a family to think that's an advantage of being celibate, is you're not having this huge impact on a family and making them leave their schools and their friends and their house and their doctors and dentists and all that stuff. So it depends on the church, and in our church we are definitely, I have to go if told, but they are very pastoral, right?
Yeah.
They wanted to bring me here, but they understood that I was a family guy and we moved a lot. So they offered me a compromise, letting Mary Kate, who had just started her freshman year in high school, to finish her year. So they had an interim priest here at St. George, and then I was transferred here in June. So hierarchical isn't necessarily horrible. And I've heard horror stories of people being transferred against their will suddenly, or you made somebody mad and they called the bishop and now you're transferred, or something like that. Things happen. But most of my my bishops do care about my family. They do. And sometimes they act in ways that aren't helpful to my family, but it's just sometimes because they just don't understand, or something. But I've just learned that being obedient and going where you're sent, there's a lot of authority there, because it's not my will I'm trying to exhibit in life, it's God's will. So I believe God speaks through my bishops, even though they're imperfect men like me. So if they send me somewhere, unless there's a really good reason that I have to say I just can't go, I'm do my best to be obedient. So I don't know if that was the answer you were
Your
looking
mom chimed in too.
for. Hey, Mom.
So our moms are proud of us today.
There we go.
We
There's
always got the support. That's great. Thank you, mothers around the world. Uh, so you were a little reluctant to come back here, but there was still a relief. Okay, I'm returning back to my roots, where my family is, reconnecting, and maybe, you know, I don't know what was that experience, and what was that, maybe a little resistance to come back to this area, but once you got here, you felt back at home. How
oh,
did that feel to you?
Western New York is home. There's just no doubt about it. I
Yep.
mean, it's where my mom is, and my sister and Kelly's family,
Hmm.
cousins, her siblings mainly now, with the loss of her mom a few years ago. And so it's always been home. And you know something you can relate to, being a Bills fan. I kind of lost interest in the what do we call that decade? The zeros, the aughts, the 2000s, whatever. You know what I mean? The
Yeah, I
team
didn't miss
stunk.
much when I wasn't here.
Yeah. Well, the team stunk, and I started learning there are other things to do on a nice fall Sunday afternoon, like taking my family to a park or something, and started doing a lot of other things. But when I was especially in Baltimore, and every Friday they would
It's the
all be
Ravens.
decked in purple,
Yeah.
right? So annoying, right? So my little office became, Western New York Central with my Bills. So I never really had lots of Bills paraphernalia, but I started acquiring some. What do you want for your birthday? Something with the Bills on it, or the Sabres, and whatever. So I got more into the team, and then of course, same thing. They're more into college football out in Oklahoma City, although there are there's fans, but their loyalties are divided out there. Dallas, Kansas City, whatever.
Hmm.
But of course, coming home coincided with the rise of the Bills, so that helped, to come back to
We
you
didn't
know.
have a hashtag Bills Mafia back in the early '90s,
That's exactly right. That was
but
12th man back then,
we
and
are part of
I've
that
known.
now. It's good to be. I've been back here since 2010, so I've kind of watched the development of this
Yeah,
new era. So it's pretty exciting about that. But
absolutely.
it's but your real passion as far as sports is really baseball, right?
My passion is baseball, but I have to be honest with you with the recent developments in MLB.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, we all know it's about money, and it always has been there, and whatever. But
Sure.
it's like they don't. It seems to me they don't care about the game at all. Whether you're talking about the players or the owners. I mean, all this. What makes baseball great and different from the other sports is its constancy. You can compare somebody to Babe Ruth because they're playing the same game, right? And but when you start changing it, it's the comparisons now are all different. I mean, it started with changing the number of games per season, and then the abomination called the designated hitter, which they are now going to spread into the National League. Which, even though I'm a Yankees fan, and that's another story too, but
Hmm.
I enjoy watching National League baseball. It's much more interesting because there's so many dynamics and stuff goes into it. But they think that people just want to watch, home runs. And guess what? Home runs are boring, unless it's the dynamic home run hit at the right time, but you watch a highlight reel at night. It's one ball after another going over a fence. Yippee. It's the defense and the aggressive base running and the coaching that goes into that and when to bunt and nobody bunts anyway. It's so I'm losing a little bit of interest in it, coinciding with the Yankees just being they're not even interesting. The best, the player that you should like, Aaron Judge, classic guy. He's a good. You feel like he's a good guy, but he's just boring. The whole thing's boring now. So, so
Well,
I'm
you
a
don't have
big
A
bicycle
Rod and
fan, I guess.
controversy, and Derek Jeter, who I think was the most stand-up guy in the league
That
from the
was fun
Yankees.
to watch between Jeter and Jorge Posado and
Hmm.
and
It was a good era, I believe.
Rivera. Exactly. And they were good guys. They were charismatic. Great personalities and whatever. So yeah. So if I get back into it, I'll probably be like a Brewers fan. I mean, I'll always be a Yankees fan, of course, but I'll probably get more into like the Brewers or some blue collar town that's never really done it. So
I went to this summer. I had a little vacation. I took a road trip all the way out to Chicago and back, and while I was there, I went to a Cubs Brewers game in Wrigley Field. That was a great experience, like Chicago style hot dog. You had to do it. And
I,
then coming
I,
back, I went to Detroit Tigers hosting Cleveland Indians. So it was a complete Great Lakes experience in
yes,
baseball. So it was really fun.
Cleveland
Um,
Guardians.
the Guardians, yeah, name changes. I'm not going to get into all that.
We're going to
Um, I kind of was discussing some things like that in my Monday show. I was just myself here, but anyways, so yeah, we're kind of like this MLB kind of funk right now. It's a good thing Buffalo has this AAA team,
yes.
the Buffalo Bisons, which we were calling Toronto when they came to our town, the Toronto um, Bisons, I think, right? Or
Yeah.
no, we were calling Buffalo um,
Buffalo Blue Jays.
Buffalo Blue Jays. Yeah, I actually had a shirt with that on there, right? Local people that were making stuff like that, and I lost it. Somehow I
Oh,
lost it, and I'm like, no, that's and I could you can't find it. Nobody's making them, so it was just a once in a lifetime experience to have the Blue Jays here, and I worked concessions volunteering, and it was really great experience to have 5,000 people
oh my
in your
gosh. Yeah.
stadium. When the Yankees were in town, I think that was the second largest it's ever had.
Yeah.
Um,
Even during COVID. I was
right.
blessed. Friends gave me a ticket. I have no clue how much they paid for it to go see and went by myself, which I have no problem. As a
Hmm.
baseball fan, I can keep score and I can, you know, uh, and pay attention every pitch type of thing. And so I had a blast. I'm very grateful to them for that. Um, but quite frankly, I was kind of glad when the Blue Jays went away and we could go back to having the Basins and I could afford to take my family to watch a game
Yeah.
and I love the game. I love the ballpark. I love it, but I just feel like Major League Baseball is screwing it up. So
My daughter Mariah loves the experience of baseball.
she?
every day she asks me, because I've taken her to like UB basketball games. I've taken her to little league games of different types all over the area, and she just loves being in where there's a crowd of people cheering, and she loves watching
Aw,
the sports.
yeah, that's
And she,
fun.
you
The
know,
perfect
the
game
the
for us, though.
experience of eating. And when we were in Detroit, no, we were in Wrigley Field. We had Chicago hot dog, and it was just so messy, and we didn't care. When we had a
Yeah,
little chili dog sauce on it, she had French fries. It's just a mess all over her shirt. I didn't care. I took a picture of that, put it on my Instagram. I mean, she was enjoying herself. I didn't care. I didn't care if it was messy. She was smiling, laughing, and just going with the crowd. She was singing,
yes,
take me out to the ball game with everybody, that kind of thing. It's like, it's a good experience no matter what scale it is. You know what I mean? In my opinion, if you're in an area that just is in a vibrant area, it's just great to be there. Great experience all overall.
yeah,
And that's
yeah.
the way church should be, really. Should be a vibrant experience too. We should be like, yeah, Jesus is like, he's doing home runs every day, we should
It's
him
true.
on.
We should be enthused about the church and whatever, but I do think we make a mistake when we think that church should be entertaining, right?
Right, right. No, I'm not trying to marginalize, you know, um everybody's got a different church experience. We know that.
right,
But but yeah, it shouldn't be a Hollywood production just to get you in the building.
right.
But if you're there and you happen to have this Hollywood presentation, hey, as long as it's in the right spirit, really, as long as you are truly there to worship God and
Yeah.
not be seen or not um, be entertained or whatever. If you're totally engaged in your worship with God while you're there, and you're reverencing Him while you're there for the right reasons. But there's many people who are there for the wrong reasons. I got to sit in the front row so everybody knows that I'm holy, that type of thing, hogwash. So, and I've been to your church for different reasons. I think I visited once. It was because of your mother-in-law.
Oh, for the funeral.
Yes, and I
Yeah.
was there maybe another time before that for something else. So, and I love it. I love it. The design, and it was kind of new and an eye-opening experience to me. I'll show you. This is kind of the inside of it. It's an eye-opening experience to me. And when I started seeing other pictures or views of, like, okay, the backdrop. Okay, you have a lot of pictures of, and a lot of this stuff was painted years ago, hundreds of years ago. Some of them, like the buildings, were just inspired by ancient artifacts or paintings, or the people who were the apostles to the apostles, if you will,
Mhm.
or the disciples of the original apostles, so to speak. So it opened my eyes to, just like you were kind of like studying church history. I was trying to understand this, like, what is this? The panels, some of the movements within the church, different, if you know what I'm saying, the
Yeah. Processions.
ritual.
Yep.
Right. Thank you. So take me through a little bit, like, something that's, most people who will watch this will be ignorant of Eastern Orthodoxy, as opposed to either Roman Catholic or the evangelical side of Christianity, or maybe just atheists in general.
Yeah.
Take me through, kind of like, what is this different, and what is this about, if you will.
Yeah. So historically speaking, you know, I was totally ignorant of the existence of orthodoxy, like I said, and except when I first, encountered it. I remember reading a newspaper article or something, and if you grew up with Greek people, that, well, they're kind of like Catholics, but not quite, something different or whatever. And but historically speaking, for the first 1,000 years, there was largely, one church. You didn't go to Thessalonica and say, where are the Orthodox? Where are the Catholics? Where's the Baptists? You said, where's the Christians? And you went there. Same with Milan or Alexandria, you know, wherever. And so there was a unity there. But in the middle of that unity, there was also great diversity. There were, they worshiped in whatever the local language was. They, there were commonalities. The service was always centered around the breaking of the bread, right? The Holy Eucharist. But the exact order, how it was done, the exact way the church was governed, there was great diversity. But importantly, there was much unity, right? The unity began to get fractured after about 1,000 years. A lot of it having to do, and remember, my perspective is that of an Orthodox Christian. If you talk to a Roman Catholic or somebody, a devout one, they would have a different perspective on this. And I encourage you to do so. But from our perspective, the church has been governed by bishops, right? And any major decision, the leadership in that local area was led by a bishop. But any major decision that affected the whole church entailed the leaders of the church coming together into a council and having a discussion about that. And we have the example and the prototype of this in the book of Acts 15, maybe, where they were dealing with the Judaizers' question, those that were going around saying that you had to become a Jew to be a Christian. And of course, adult males who are not circumcised especially would take issue with that. But then, of course, everything else, eating kosher and making sacrifices in the temple and all this other stuff. And it was controversial. And even among the apostles were shown that Peter and Paul were disagreeing with each other. And, these holy men, these men that we know had the words of Christ and brought them down to us, had a disagreement with them. And the way they settled it was by coming into council in Jerusalem, led by St. James, interestingly, not St. Peter, who they came together and they came to a decision. Just like 3 or 4 things. One, that they abstain from fornication, and secondly, that they don't eat blood and don't eat meat that was offered to idols and this kind of thing. And other than that, but the point being, they made a decision in council. And so for us in the Eastern perspective, that's the pattern. That's how you do it. And so through history, you have what we would number, there were 7 great councils. Probably the most well-known, because most people are familiar, at least they've heard the term Nicene Creed.
Nicene, yeah.
Right. So the first council came together in 325, and they were combating a heresy from a man named Arius, who was a leader in the Church of Alexandria, who began teaching that Christ was a creature. Even though he was the most exalted creature among all of creation, he was still a creature. The terminology he used was, there was a time when the Son of God was not. Okay, so that means that he's not the eternal begotten. He's not eternal with the Father and co-equal with him, because he had a point of origin, whereas God has no point of origin. He is the source of, he's the origin of everything. So Arius started teaching these things and causing confusion and damage. So they came together in a council in Nicaea. And one of the most interesting anecdotes that I love to talk about every year in December is St. Nicholas of Myra was one of the bishops who was in attendance. And he was so enraged by the things that that Arius was saying, he walked up and struck him across the face. So Santa Claus, yeah, he knows whether you've been good or bad, so you better be good, or he'll strike you across the face.
Slap you around the face.
He'll slap you around a bit, yeah. And I love all the memes that come around that time of year.
So is that justification for fathers to slap their kids, or?
It is not. In fact, he was censured by the Brotherhood.
Okay, gotcha.
And then he was removed from the assembly, but then they all had a dream, or some of the important ones had a dream the night before, the Lord telling them to restore him. And he, of course, was apologetic for the anger and the violence. But the point being, you can understand where he's coming from. And Arius was finally censured and removed from, and his heresy was condemned. And this is why we have the Nicene Creed that states, I believe in one God, the Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth, and one begotten Son, begotten of the Father before all worlds, light of light, very God, begotten, not made, begotten of the Father before all things were made. and it goes on, of course. So that's the pattern. That's where, and so the Nicene Creed is recited in traditional churches to this day. When somebody says, well, what do you believe? I have something I can easily go to. And so from our perspective, there were another 6 major councils, and then there were all kinds of smaller ones that had, when this council meets and says, hey, this is true, we're going to do this. And the church as a whole says, yeah, they're right there. What they said in, Ephesus or something. They were right, and we're going to continue to believe that. So eventually in the West, though, the Bishop of Rome, who was always the first among equals, he was always the one who would be looked to settle disputes and to share any differences. Eventually, instead of being, one of the brother bishops who just happened to be the most senior, then now all of a sudden he's like a super bishop who rules over the bishops. And so the supremacy aspect of that was rejected by the East. And so that's what led to the schism. So the Orthodox Church of this day, while we have patriarchs of different churches in our family of churches, different bishops and whatever, any major decision still would have to come from a council or synod or gathering, where of course we know the West is different, and the history takes off differently from that point. That's historically where the difference is.
And I kind of was getting into it a little bit, but I was so distracted with learning cell biology and evolutionary biology that I couldn't get into it as much. But now I have a little bit more free time, I'm going to be diving into a lot of this stuff, a lot more into the church history and all that, because I'm not saying I'm a purist, but growing up, you seen and not just in one denomination or type of church, but you see heresy or what's the right word I'm looking for? Anyways, hypocrisy within churches. You see corruption sometimes in some churches, not necessarily the whole denomination, but within certain church fellowships, maybe. So, I grew up very skeptic of religious type of Christianity. And even while I was in the Navy, I went overseas exploring the other religions, mostly Eastern. Buddhism and Hinduism were kind of like, okay, let's check this out. What do they do? Go to the temples, watch and observe the people, what they're doing, talk to the people, ask questions. Went to the big Buddha in Japan. Um, you know, just kind of checking it out, the temple, the big statue, and just trying to. I was on my spiritual journey, early '90s. I was in the Navy. We were post-war time, I guess, kind of like in a little bit of conflicts with Somalia as well. So I'm just trying to figure out. Okay, I'm in the Middle East. I'm checking out these open air mosques during Ramadan. I'm like, what is going on? How come these people are free with their religion in their countries? And I know it's because there's a lot to do with government, um, you know, run facilities, funded, but some of it is because that's their foundation for their whole society. You know, I mean, the Mecca, you go to Saudi Arabia, everybody's just, they're free to be Muslims.
Right.
You don't have a bunch of other people picketing, women's rights and, gay rights. And you don't have that kind of a thing. Of course, they're a little bit more strict on issues like that. But I didn't see any kind of uh, like that for Christianity as a whole. Of course, capital of Roman Catholics in Rome, and then the Catholic. What would be the Orthodox? I mean, Constantinople used to be right at one point, which is now Istanbul, Turkey. What is the kind of like the central location for Eastern Orthodox today?
The central location. So, yeah, that's a good question. So originally, you would look to such lands as, well, the Middle East. Okay.
Yeah.
The Holy Land where Jesus was, that that would have been always, there were Christians there from that time. The church never went anywhere. It was always there. So, we consider the Palestinians and the others in that area, the Christians as part of our community, the Syrians and Lebanese, as I spoke. And then, of course, Greece. Most people know some Greeks and Greek Orthodoxy, Bulgaria, Serbia, and then Russia and Ukraine. Now, over the years, because of civil governments and wars and this kind of thing, a lot of the ancient lands of the Middle East were overrun by the Ottoman Empire, mainly. Other Islamic incursions, and then Russia was overrun by the Bolsheviks. And under communism for all these years. And so there ends up being, from these situations, a big diaspora, people that have left to go to the West, to Europe, to the United States, and of course, brought their faith with them. At the same time, there were missionary endeavors. St. Herman of Alaska is a favorite of mine. He came with a bunch of monks in 1790s. At the time, Russia, remember, still owned Alaska. And the fur traders and all of them were pretty much abusing the natives at the time. They were not doing good by them, and so this mission came, number one, to tend to the needs of of course, there were devout Orthodox among them, to their needs among the Russians, but also to defend the natives and to do their best to help to bring them to Christ and to bring them to faith. So to this day, there's a very sizable, if you meet native Alaskans, there's a really good chance that they're going to be, at least culturally Orthodox.
Gotcha.
So,
yeah, and that is an interesting topic we can talk about probably another time, another day.
Yeah.
About the whole colonization and the evangelistic things that happened throughout history within this land anyways. But so just real quick backtracking, just kind of like my transition was going from Christianity, Catholic, Baptist, and Pentecostal, going to the Middle East and going to Asia, experiencing pretty devout Muslims in the United Arab Emirates and devout Buddhists in Hong Kong and Shinto in Japan, and Philippines was it's like a completely different type of Catholic faith. So there's a lot of like all these different variations of a religious world that I was exploring and trying to understand. Came back to the United States, realized that drugs on the beach of California was much safer. No, at the time, anyways. Drinking, drugging, all that stuff. Had to get out of that environment, but you know, learning learning about Christ is what I had to just like. Okay, let's forget about denominations, religion, and all that stuff. Let's find out about this Jesus Christ, this historical figure. Let's look at it in a historical context first. Then let's see if this is what I feel like is the truth. And that's basically what it was. I wasn't seeking after where I can fit in and how I can serve or who's like, oh, this is a really godly person. It wasn't a cult of personality I was chasing for. I was trying to look for the truth. Period. End of story. And I just felt after coming back and seeking the word of God that I actually found the truth, that Jesus Christ is the truth. So that kept me on that path from that point on. Not saying, like you said, hey, not the perfect walk. I wasn't the example of Christianity, but I'm an example of a seeker trying to understand Christianity, if anything.
For sure.
And today I just, I'm serving in a church, playing drums. I'm in the media, and I'm doing, I do what I can relationally to kind of share who Jesus is. But,
Yeah.
but it's a journey that a lot of people they have different paths. Yours is understanding who Christ is, understanding church history, and you becoming now a leader. So explain to me at this season in your life, And especially we'll get into what happens in Ukraine. I know you're a busy man. I don't want to keep you, but explain to me the season you're in today with your leadership position and what's on your heart. Really, that's what I want to know.
Yeah. Being a pastor obviously, changes the way I look about things. I think growing up, I think my personality and everything, I tend to gravitate towards polemicism, and there's a part of me that's very, my wife and I talk about things all the time because we're so different. So it's awesome to be able to get the perspectives of somebody that you're close to who's different from you. And so we talk about order and disorder, which is really an important way to look at things. I used to always look at that order was just something that was good, right? Heaven's orderly and the earth is chaos, so we need to be orderly like heaven is. But the problem with that is that you realize that attempts to create order usually become abusive. I mean, think about, isn't that what Hitler's whole thing was? Creating a perfect order to things. And
Yep.
and it becomes abusive because when you don't fit into his perfect idea of order, and I'm not God, so my ideas about order are certainly going to end up being abusive at some point. At the same time, we think about, we've neglected the importance of chaos. We just think chaos is just horrible, and there's no we just have to bring order into chaos, and we do, but chaos is potential, right? I have a chaotic idea of what the future might hold. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, right? But does that mean tomorrow's bad? No, it means it's full of opportunity that for me to go in and bring some order, some godly order. I really do believe that we've lost this balance of thinking about disorder and order, and because God created the world, right? The face of the water. Well, in the ancient world, water represents disorder. So he came in and his breath over the disorder and begins to bring order into that situation. So so any creativity, any building has to entail this process of, you have to have disorder and chaos as a part of that, or there is no creativity. We're just static. We're just created as we are. We're just here in God's perfect world. But he created us in his image. He wants us to be creative, wants us to participate in ordering the world. And so that implies there has to be chaos involved in our life. And realizing that has revolutionized the way I feel about things. For instance, the black and white way that I've, living in life, according to the Holy Scriptures and the Christian faith, homosexuality is wrong. Right? It's a sin. It's clear. There's people that try to get around that. Well, St. Paul didn't mean this. He was referring to pride or something like that, and whatever. But yet, it's easy to think of somebody who's homosexual and that there's this great divide between you and them because what they're doing is wrong, it's sinful, and I'm doing the right thing. But if you realize that there's disorder in the world and that there's disorder in me, just because I'm not a homosexual doesn't mean I've got my act together. I'm perfectly ordered because I have my share of issues. So I can look at my brother or sister who I think, okay, I think homosexuality is wrong, but that's not what defines them, and that's not what should define my relationship with them, any more than my gluttony or my own lust or my whatever should define who I am. So I just feel like this is one of the things I've been learning a lot about lately, as I study studying the scriptures through the lens of how they actually understood the scriptures. It's not a textbook for I moved my Bible in the other room, but it's not a textbook for perfectly ordering our life. It's not a textbook of science. It's a revelation of God into our world, and it's it's using the symbolic language of the ancient people to do so, and we have to dive into that world and begin to understand that if we want to fully apply the scriptures to ourselves. So that's kind of what excites me today. But it's been parish ministry that's helped me, because people are in so many different stages. They struggle with so many different things, but there's not a single person who doesn't struggle. From my bishop in Damascus, the patriarch of Antioch, to a monk or nun in a monastery, to the Muslims that live here in Niagara Falls, to the guys in the prison, to me, we're all broken, sinful people, and God loves us all. So where do I find order for that? I find it in church and placing myself there. And when I can find the love of God and His order for the world, then my life becomes more orderly, and I can share that with others. But I have to admit the chaos and the potential. You can't stay, Amy Grant, can't stay in the mountaintop, right? Well, the mountain represents Eden, and that's what the church is supposed to represent, paradise, where we meet with God. Okay, you have to go there. That has to exist. You've got to center your life around it, but you also got to be okay with going to the margins. And if you can't exist in the margins either, and that's what Christ did. We believe in hierarchy and orthodoxy, and of course, God is at the top. He is the top of the hierarchy. But the whole incarnation is the point that He came down, and He's part of the bottom too. He's at the margins. He's not at the center of things always. He's also at the margins and into the chaos. And so it's a little chaotic in my thinking. This is stuff I'm working on to sort out too. But that's so that becomes my model for ministering to my family and in the parish and outside of the parish and whatnot. So I don't know if that made any sense at all.
Perfect sense. And I do think that a lot of times people will enter at different stages in a church, or are within fellowship at a different stage. But one of the things that I discovered, some people will be overcome with guilt, condemnation, or whatever, based on sometimes a message or what the word is revealing to somebody. And I don't think the Spirit of God wants you to feel condemned or suffer mental illness over a sin that you have committed in the past, to the point where you want to off yourself, trying to put it lightly. So I do believe, as a Christian anyways, our enemy is Satan, Lucifer, fallen angel. There's many different terms, the devil, and then he has demons that work under him that kind of do his bidding, if you will. So I believe that one of the purposes of Satan would be to hold Christians, specifically in this context, accountable, or hold them down with guilt, condemnation, so that they feel like they can't progress in life, or in a spiritual context of their lives. Get closer to God, understanding God more. And I see that a lot. I see a lot of people who are hesitant, are full of guilt, shame, and condemnation. And I know that's where the enemy wants people, especially seeking after Christ. That's where he wants them to sit, in that realm of, overwhelming shame and guilt, condemnation, oppression, possession, even. That's where the enemy wants. And Christ is the absolute opposite of that. He wants to liberate you from the weight of all that, because that's the whole message of this cross is, I'm dying so that I can take that from you. I can take these things from you. Not the act of it, but the shame of it, the feelings that you are overcome with when you realize, hey, this is not what I was created to do. This is not who I am according to my Creator's perspective. So that relationship with Christ becomes imperative. Reading the Word, having people that are close to God mentor or minister to you to get closer to God and help you with that path. So does that make any sense?
Amen. Yeah, that's the whole point. Anything else is, and that's, you know, circling back like to trauma, right? I
Mhm.
mean, trauma is a disordering, right? We
Right.
we grew up and things were orderly and they make sense, and then we go off to war and we're involved with killing or some major crime or abuse that happens in my life. Somebody that I trusted in this hierarchy abuses me or whatever, and so we're thrown into chaos. And Christ brings us perfect order. He brings us back to where we're supposed to be in relationship to God, because if our relationship to God is healed, then everything begins to take its place. And but it's a process. It's not an overnight thing. Patterns of thinking have to change. um Patterns of acting have to change. Sometimes that's I like what you listen to Jordan Peterson at all. Do you like any of his
A little
stuff?
bit, yeah.
So he talks about, like, because he's so unclear on whether he's a Christian, a God believer, or what. Because he's always like, well, what do you mean by God? What do you? Because he wants people. He goes, I could say I believe in God, but you might think something totally than what I mean by that when I say that. So,
Mhm.
I like a lot of what he says. Um, why did I bring him up? What was it? I don't
Jordan
know.
Peterson.
Oh, so he says, like, if you don't believe in God, how about try acting like you believe in God and see what happens in your life, right?
That means hypocrite,
Alcohol,
really.
there's a reason for you to get it. What's that?
That actually means hypocrite if you're
Well,
acting.
this is where this whole thing's changing for me, because um, while we have to be aware of hypocrisy,
Yep.
um, we are so wrong when we are judging all the other hypocrites out there, because we're hypocrites, right? I mean,
What actually means that in the context of theater too, just in general, that we're
yeah.
acting comes from
Well,
hypocrite.
fake it
So
till you make it, right?
yeah.
I was taught by a wise older gentleman when I was newly married. And whenever I had a fight with my wife or whatever, he says, go and buy her flowers. I go, but I don't feel like. He goes, if you wait till you feel like you're going to buy her flowers, you'll never buy her flowers, and you're
She'll
only
never get any
perpetuating.
flowers from you. Yeah.
Yeah, but if you go, all right, she's a jerk. She treats me wrong. I don't, whatever. I'm mad at her, whatever. Here's the flowers. I go home. Well, the act of giving a gift to somebody changes your heart. And then my giving a gift to her changes, because it takes two to tango. There's something going on. If our relationship's not good, she's certainly feeling that, sensing that too. So my giving a gift to her changes things. So 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 a lot of, my approach to Christianity now is sometimes, so sometimes, you know um sometimes I don't believe in God. I struggle with faith. I relate to Thomas. When Mother Teresa passed away, and they released some of her memoirs, and the atheists were like, see, you Christians, she struggled with, because she's talking about, like, her doubts and her lack of faith sometimes. It's like, that only made her more real to me. you know that
Yeah.
that that she's a real person, that she did great things, sure, but she wasn't just some kind of superhero that never, I just believe in God and I'm going to do everything right. No, I can totally relate to her, that despite her doubts and sometimes struggles with God, and again, it goes, Mom, if you're still listening, Mom, we were talking about this yesterday. A thinking person has to struggle with these things, right? And so we shouldn't get so excited, and when somebody is struggling with them, oh yeah, that makes sense that you would struggle with that, and give them the space and the time to work it out with God, and not triangulating ourselves into their relationship. Um, Derailed again. What was I talking about? So faking it till you're making it thing. So I'm
Right.
like, so when I'm struggling with this, um, I'm a pastor. I have limitless opportunities to do some good today. I have a list of people that need to be called, and I'm always feeling horrible. Who's this? Your brother?
Yeah. Leg up
Hey,
music.
cousin Brandon. I have limitless opportunities to do something. So why don't I do something? Why don't I call somebody that I haven't seen in church for a while? Why don't I go visit, Aunt Susie, who's, not going to come to church because of COVID or this and that? Why don't I do, when I start doing these things for others, then a lot of my intellectual issues resolve themselves, because I've ordered myself physically, and then the mental ordering follows the body. We tend to always think it's got to be the other way around. I got to have all my ducks in a row. And then once I do that, then I'll know what to do. Well, sometimes you know what to do. You know, what are you supposed to do? Love God, love your neighbors, do those things. And then the intellectual strugglings, the cognitive issues, that follows. It's embodying the gospel sometimes before we, work on being, St. Thomas Aquinas or some other, J.I. Packard or some other theologian,
Smith Wigglesworth.
Smith Wigglesworth or anybody, well, you're hitting in my wheelhouse here. So if I start jammering on about something,
no, it's okay. We don't have to go.
I've struggled with.
We're gonna do more conversations another time because
I hope so. I'm enjoying
this could be a 6-hour thing if we wanted it to be, and I don't want to take it past. I would say noon. I mean today, but I do want to understand who is St. George, real quick, if you can. That's the name of your parish.
Good question.
Niagara Falls. Who is St. George? Because I Googled it. There's a lot of St. George churches all over the place. And in New York State, the Great Lakes or whatever, kind of looking up which is the closest one. I got one here in Detroit, one out in Albany, New York, and then yours is, of course,
downtown
Niagara
Buffalo,
Falls.
Nottingham Terrace. Our sister parish is St. George as well.
Right. That's right.
Yeah.
There's downtown Buffalo here, and then here's where you're at in Niagara Falls, just across the Niagara Falls River from Niagara Falls, Canada, which is a very much bigger tourist attraction than the American side. But hopefully someday we can change that.
Yes.
So tell me who St. George is.
So most people are familiar with the story of George and the dragon, St. George and as the dragon slayer. So that's obviously has some legendary or mythic characteristics to it, right? Although, the more I study things, what do we mean by a dragon? What's a dragon? Certainly there is a dragon. As I say, I'm sort of in process about understanding things and whatever. But if we're going to talk from a modern perspective, who we, materialistic history, there is a man named George, and George is George was a Roman soldier who at some point becomes a Christian. And he ends up being put, if I knew you were going to ask this, I would have done my homework and given you a better answer.
This is a lot more fun to have it raw.
Yeah. Okay. So he as a Roman soldier, it was not compatible at that time for him to be a Christian, or at least in the eyes of his leaders. And so he was given opportunities to recant this faith. And he refused to deny his Christ. And so he began to suffer many things. And I can't speak too directly because I'm sure I will conflate his story with some others. But I think he had a huge rock put on him at one point to crush him. And I'm not sure otherwise. But I do know he had several ordeals with the opportunity to recant his belief in Christ. And finally, he was martyred for Christ. So where does the dragon and the maid and all that come in? As I say, it's most likely apocryphal stories that who's the dragon? He's Satan. And St. George, by his faithfulness to Christ and his steadfastness in adhering to the gospel, defeats the dragon. And the maiden is all of us who need a hero, need to have somebody to rescue us from the distractions and the pits that are there for us that would keep us away from salvation and away from God. So that's the best answer I can give you right now. I know there's much better answers out there, but we do know he was a real live person, and he's it was in Joppa in Palestine where he suffered, and there's his cult, we call it CULT. And to define terms, we got to be careful with the word. We usually in modern life talk about cults in a negative sense. Jim Jones and the Moonies and Tom Cruise and the Scientologists we're talking about, but that's not the origin of the word. That's not what it always means. Cult just means like there's a following, like people like the Rocky Horror Picture Show, right? Is the cult following, or some obscure
short for the culture, if you will.
Culture, right? Exactly. And so St. George's cult sprung up around Joppa, and in the Holy Land itself, the Christians there have a deep love for him. They go to his tomb, to his grave, and pray there, and they receive miracles by St. George's prayers. So in the Antiochian church, I think it's like almost at one point it was like 2/3 of our parishes were St. George. So there's a joke, like I was involved with mission work in my first parish, but the joke, so when you establish a mission, at least the way it was done then, is you could submit 3 potential saints, 3 names for your parish to the archbishop, and he would pick one of them. So they would say, always give St. George to be one of them, and then the other one I think was St. Ignatius, which is another popular one because he was an early bishop in the church, and you give those 2, and then the third one's the one you really want, because he's not going to give you George, and he's not likely to give you Ignatius, so then you can get the name for your parish you want anyway. But so yes, there's a lot of Father Georges and St. Georges, especially in the Arab Orthodox, also within the Greek Orthodox, and it's still there, but less as profoundly in the Slavics. So
It's interesting. Yeah, because origin of names is, to me, is very fascinating, and why they pick it or whatever. So that's interesting. A lot of people gravitate towards George first, probably, as
yeah,
opposed to George of the Jungle, which is a very popular cartoon back in I believe that was the 60s, maybe the 70s. I don't know.
you could still see it when I was a kid in the 70s. So
Yeah,
I don't know if it was a regular Saturday morning thing or if it was
it was for a while. I used to watch it Saturday morning
Okay, there you
cartoon.
go.
George
Yeah,
of the Jungle, man.
George.
He wasn't of the jungle, obviously, though. So,
In the jungle.
uh, a great conversation. I'm really happy that you agreed to do this, because I've always wanted to really have a serious conversation with you. Most of the time, it's in context of family gatherings. It's surface conversation, or sometimes a joking, a scenario, if you will. But it was never like deep conversations that you and I have ever had. And this kind of gives me that platform to kind of do such a thing, but
Yeah,
also let people have some education from a different perspective. So really
yeah,
happy.
no, it's great. And I'm glad you're doing that. I had a similar idea last year, because I have so many interesting people in my life. You being included, and your cousin Brandon, and whatever. I thought
Very
how
interesting, aren't I?
interesting it would be to, well, how interesting it would be to, like, once a week was my model that I was working in my head, to just have a conversation with one of these awesome people and share them with the rest of my friends group or whoever else would watch my show. So I'm too busy to do something like that, but for you to do that, I think it's awesome, and I'm honored and appreciate having. Um, Thank you, Aunt Carol, by your prayers and God's grace, definitely. Um, I feel honored and blessed. It's a fun conversation, and I'm more than willing to have more and dive down deeper in some of these things we've touched on, or I know we missed out on some of the things that you intended to talk about, but like I
Now
say,
we'll touch on one last thing before we go. We'll just get into that film festival, which kind of like bridged that gap from you know the Full Gospel Tabernacle youth group to you know coming back to Western New York again. Really,
yeah,
I don't really, for whatever reason, I don't get invites to family gatherings. Maybe it's just because I have either abrasive personality, or people just don't get me, um, or they're just not feeling my fellowship. I don't know, but I don't get too many invites to not just family, but friends and all that stuff.
there
But
hasn't been too much the last couple of years with the COVID.
right, the last 2 years, give everybody the excuse. COVID
Yeah,
is
but I
because
think
of
we're all
COVID.
due for a good family gathering, and you are certainly.
I come from a very large family on my mother's side. My mom is
Yeah,
number 9 out of 10. So the Rainville family name is all over. But prior to people moving out of Western New York, we always had huge family gatherings.
that's
And
right.
there's 35 cousins among us. I think at this point, maybe more. Second cousins as well now, and we used to always get together and at least pretend we loved each other, but we had a good time. There's some conflict always,
Always.
as you can imagine, but
Understandable.
with 50 people in a gathering, you can imagine there's always something that's going to happen amongst people. But we had good Christmases with the aunt and uncles and the cousins. We would just kind of like be a side hangout, but it was just great time. And the passing of Grandma Rainville was what kind of that was it pretty much.
That's usually what happens. That
Yeah,
dynamic, losing the top of the hierarchy again, right? And then also the little more hierarchies are being started, and
yeah,
so somebody who was always enjoying being a part of the, now I've got an in-laws and then my own progeny, so
yeah.
you start getting overwhelmed, and and it's unfortunate, but you do start.
Well,
You know,
it becomes annoying too when you have somebody like me who's like, okay, I want to be at this uncle's house next week, or I want to hang, or I become one of those annoying family members. You're like, we're busy, okay? You know what I mean? You want to tell them nicely. No, I'm not. It's not that bad. But I did when I first got here. I just want to connect, see who's doing what and say hi and try to
well, you got
build
an
some sort of a
invite to
friendship,
the.
relationship, and it just doesn't pan out. But honestly, maybe it's also God keeping me focused on what the plan is that He has for me, and I have put that in perspective. So it's helpful to not always be fellowshipping with family all the time because
Yeah.
you really get distracted at times. So
What does this make possible? A friend of ours always says, and that's
sure.
a great approach, I think.
So brothers coming in September, possibly,
Oh
and
yes,
he's definitely going to come up and visit you guys up there. So,
awesome.
but last point I want to bring up, okay, we did a film festival here in Buffalo. This is going to be our seventh or our eighth coming up, but our seventh was last summer. We had we had the Aurora Theater uh, at our you know at our disposal for uh, hosting films, and one of the films that came up was this film called Man of God, and I really had no idea who this gentleman in the faith was. I only knew, hey, Mickey Rourke, the actor, was part of the film project, and that's all I knew about it. But I want to see if you can give me an idea, and I'm going to butcher the name, maybe not. Saint Nectarios of Aegina.
There, yeah. In Greek, G's are always hard, so Aigna.
Sure.
Um,
O-
so
Okay,
yeah,
so explain to me who the saint is that this movie, Man of God, is portraying, which again will be March 21st all over the country. Look for
yeah.
it. There's another movie out that's not related called The Man of God. It has Frodo in that one. That's not the
Ah,
one we're talking about. Okay, Frodo is not the Man of God movie we're talking about. Okay,
he's a
this
type
one,
of the man of God.
sure, right, in their world, I guess.
The sacrificial, laying down his life for the world.
So that's not the one we're talking about. We're talking about this one specifically. Man
Yes.
of God, starring Yelena. Oh, it's by Yelena Popovich, starring Alexander Petrov, who's believe a Russian actor. Mickey Rourke, and then Tonia Setchel. That's a Greek name. I'm not going to try it,
It's too
but
small for me to see. So
yeah, I'm sorry.
Cervitalis, Audio Cervitalis, and Tonia. Let
There,
me. I got to try this. Sotiropulu. Sotiropulu. I don't know where I
Palau.
got
I
the
think
impossible
Palau.
on syllable probably.
Citero Palau, maybe I think, and then
No, OU is Mu. Pulu.
Okay, and then
Yeah,
Eris Savatalis
there's
as
Cervitalis.
Nectarios. Right? That's how you say his name.
Nectarios. Very good.
All right. Not bad for an Irish, non-Catholic, non-Greek, non-denominational Christian. So
With
that's coming
single
up March
fins.
21st. Anybody who's watching, go check that out. Man of God. But tell me who this guy was, real quick.
Yeah, I highly recommended that you do it. It was so great to connect with you, Shawn, there, and we're appreciative of your film festival, and our first real exposure to it with you bringing in this great movie that, of course, for us Orthodox, really related to us. But Saint Nectarios happens to be on my wall behind me, an icon that was drawn by a friend of ours, Mark Canan, who grew up in this parish and now lives in Pittsburgh. But I want to preface talking about who Saint Nectarios is by the story of how he became important to our family. When Colin, as I mentioned before, my firstborn, but I don't think we talked about it. When he was 2, he had contracted a retinoblastoma, a cancerous tumor in his right eye, and the cure for it was, thank God, when he was diagnosed. What does this mean? How further along? We tried to think of ways to save the eye, but the tumor was already engulfing the whole eye. To save his life, we had to remove his eye, and by God's grace, thank God, the rest of the pathology was good. His optic nerve and everything was healthy, so that means that the cancer was not spreading to the rest of the body. But of course, a hard thing to get through as a young family. Our firstborn, he was 2. It was just a week after his second birthday. He was diagnosed, and Hannah was a baby born in January that year. And so we were grieving over this within the day, within a couple of days of this diagnosis. And then one day the doorbell rings, and this is long before, everyone's got a cell phone and text you, hey, can I stop by or whatever. People would be more inclined, as you were lamenting, to just stop by and be okay with all that kind of thing. I think we here's the order disorder thing. I think we overly order and program our lives now because of your calendar and your phone and your directions and all this stuff. But little Lebanese guy, Chuck Canan, who's a reader here, a chanter here at the parish, comes into our backyard there on Lewiston Road, weeping, just so sad and distraught by what we were going through. And in his hands, he's carrying this icon of Saint Nectarios, a book, and then a little bottle with some holy oil in it. Well, the book was about Saint Nectarios, and then the holy oil was olive oil, which we burn in lanterns in front of icons when we want to, when we say a prayer, we want to remember the light of Christ in our lives. Physical things we do to go along with the mental, as I was mentioning before, or to help guide the mental. And the oil was from his vigil lamp that hangs over his tomb in Agna. And so he brought that to us. And, so we read about St. Nectarios, put his icon in our house, anointed Colin daily with the holy oil, and experienced a great peace of God that was present with us that we know for sure was due to St. Nectarius' prayers. So St. Nectarius was a bishop who passed away, I think, like in the 1920s. Does that seem right to you, Shawn?
Yeah, it was early, around World War I era.
Yeah, he was 20th century, and he was a holy man who was going to be the Patriarch of Alexandria, but jealous clerics, and again, lots of sinners among us, started to contrive against him and slander him and made up kinds of bad stories about him, and to the fact that he was believed by his spiritual father, his friend, the patriarch, and so he was cast out of the patriarchate. He was the bishop at the time of Pentopolis, which I'm a city there in that area. And so ended up where, as a disgraced bishop, what can you do? He wasn't a carpenter. He wasn't, a policeman to go teach at the police academy or anything like that. He dedicated his whole life. He was a monk and then a priest. And so, the story, and it's portrayed in the movie, is his struggles with that, and how he, became ran a boys' school, and his holiness, and cleaning the toilets and everything else when the janitor fell ill, so that the janitor wouldn't lose his job. So he'd come in the middle of the night when no one was looking to clean the toilets, and eventually founded a young group of girls who wanted to become nuns, asked him to be their spiritual father. And I'm just breezing through it, but it's just a very moving story. All around me as we sat and watched it, people were sobbing great. So he's important to us Orthodox. He's very important to me in my family, and so thrilled that you and your festival are able to bring this movie in and expose it and expose him to so many other people. So I'm grateful.
Yeah, I tell you what, I was honored to be able to have that, submitted to my festival. And this is, to me, probably was the best film we've ever had, in
Mm.
my opinion. And it's not just because you're here. It truly was. When I first saw this film, there was another one out of Brazil that was very similar in nature, but this one just was so impactful to me, and the quality of this was amazing.
Yes.
The cinematography is amazing. The acting is amazing. They truly had the best of the best actors portraying these people in this
Mm.
film. So
Yeah.
that's I was ecstatic. I'm like, I'm honored that they chose to submit it to our festival. But not only that, they did everything they could to make sure we had the tools and the things to make sure it was on the big screen that we were allotted. Another I mean, to me, it was all God that was orchestrating this whole festival last year. There's no other way it could have happened, you know. On top of that, there was also a documentary that was Orthodox in nature as well, that
Yeah.
followed it. So that was kind of neat. Was everything was definitely, and I could tell you this, Kevin, when it comes to, or Raphael, Father Raphael, I could tell you this: when it comes to this festival, this is definitely God ordained and it's God run. And all I
Mm.
do is just say, okay, it's almost like you feel it, like, okay, this is what I'm going to do next. And that's it. It's not like I have a preconceived idea or a program that has to be done a certain way. It's not like that. It's
Being comfortable
totally,
in the chaos.
it's like spiritually organic is the only way I can
Mm.
describe it. And it's such a rush when it finally is over and you got what the fruit that comes from it.
Right.
And I tell you, we had the fellowship of the fathers and the parishioners from all over the region that did attend, I was just so proud to be able to be a part of bringing people together to see this film. It's kind of like it was a one night only special event. Nobody else can see this film type of thing. I was like, yes, I'm the guy that's got this one. You know what I mean? I felt, I was like, I was honored. I was
I was
really
really
honored to be
honored
able
to be
to
able to
present this
present.
to you guys.
It was
So
cool. People came from far away, from
they did.
Pittsburgh, and yeah,
Pittsburgh and I think Michigan, somebody.
yeah.
So, anyways,
Oh, Fort Wayne, Indiana. Our friends came from Fort Wayne, Indiana, to watch it. So
Indiana, that's right. It's another one. So, if you get a chance, March 21st, Man of God is showing around the country. So, but that's it. That's all I got. And other than maybe we'll just shout out once again. There he is, Joe Gramalia, the new commissioner, formerly deputy, just advanced to commissioner of the Buffalo Police. I'm excited for him, uh, taking over the duties from Byron Lockwood, who just retired a couple days ago, actually. And you have anything to say about the state of the union address? Anything? You can make it brief. We can get into that another day. But
yeah, and I do have to get your cousin to the airport.
all right,
I'm gonna have to leave soon, but yeah, there's lots, and I really enjoyed chatting with you,
very cool.
brother, cousin, and
They're out over your crane with a gun.
oh my gosh, yeah, and and then of course there's the issues with the orthodoxy,
Mm.
and
We'll save that for another time.
Ukrainians are Orthodox and the Russians are Orthodox, and so
That's a deep subject, and
yeah.
let's hit on that another time. I don't want to keep you, but thanks again, uh, Reverend Father Raphael Kevin Barberg. Got the whole thing in there. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for being a part of this conversation. Tell my cousin I love her. I'll have love for your whole family, and one of these days we'll get back together. Hopefully
We
this
will
summer.
definitely do it this summer. You got an open invite in Youngstown, so come on up.
Don't say
We'll
that, because
solidify it.
I will show up your door at 2 a.m. one day with some baklava and say, "Hey, what you guys doing, man?" No, I wouldn't do that to you. So God bless you, man. Thanks, Kev. I
All right,
appreciate
Sean.
your willingness to just be a part of this show.
Thank you for having me. God bless you. Love you.
All right, man. All right. So once again, a family member. I mean, he's fully blown cousin to me, in my opinion, and married to one of my cousins in the family. He's a good friend. He's just good people. He did a lot to to spread the gospel according to how he was called, and he's a leader of a flock now. And as my mother said, blessings to your what'd she say? She says, oh yeah, this is my mom is also watching. She's a faithful watcher. Love you, Mom. Carol Greene down in Florida. I go visit her quite often. And Paula Brickhouse, Kevin's mother, was also watching. And I don't know who else, maybe my brother. So the people who are watching live, thanks for watching. I appreciate your, willingness to glean from the conversation that I'm having with Kevin. And if you guys are interested in being on the show, go to ShawnPGreene.com. Got all the links on the bottom, but I also have the phone number. You can call in either during or after or before, it doesn't matter. You can call, you can text, you can leave a message if you want to just leave a message, a shout out, if you will, or leave a text message, and I'll read it live in whenever broadcast comes up. I do intend to be here again tomorrow at 10 a.m. Friday, March 4th. But today was a special day. I was really looking forward to this conversation. Kevin and I go back many years, and we have this thread of the family in our give my love to his wife. This is my mom. You gotta love my mom. She's like my cheerleader on the sidelines. Here you go. First she says, give my love to your wife, hugs to Kevin, and she says, I love you too, and great job. My mom's proud of me. I'm proud of her. We do a lot of things when I get down to Florida, as much as we can, both of my parents, as much as we can, as they can tolerate from me. When I get down there, sometimes I'm tired. I'm just relaxing from the trip. But my daughter Mariah goes with me around sometimes, and we'll go out to dinner and eat or something. But it's been great having a parent like her. Like I said, she's a cheerleader. She cheers me on for the things I do. But once again, ShawnPGreene.com. If you want to check out old shows, this is always streaming right now. YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. All those links are on my website. And you can also donate. Anybody that wants to donate just to help out, we have all this equipment that I'm going to be implementing little by little. But we got more we can purchase so that we can make this even more spectacular. So just keep it locked and make your comments. You can email me. It's the same as the PayPal. All right. Go to the podcast. You want to watch the YouTube links and the playlist. I have a YouTube playlist there. But finally, I just want to make sure I reiterate, just go see this movie, Man of God. I'll play this little bit of this trailer before we go so you guys can enjoy what to expect March 21st around the country. So here we go. Here's a trailer, Man of God, as was submitted to me.
We cannot take the risk of him becoming a patriarch. He consorts with harlots on the streets. I know it is hard for you to believe that he can be a Judas, but it's true, Your Holiness.
I'm not even sure about his good heart.
You think that you can come here and pretend to be holy?
I'm starting to think that you're not human.
You seem to be the real deal. No wonder they don't like it.
We will demand Patriarch Sophronie to be removed and place you in his position.
Get out.
I understand why the people of Egypt love you. We had you here for a short time and you've performed miracles.
You're a holy man, Your Grace. I lost my eyesight due to illness when I was very little. There is so much light in your presence.
We feel that you don't exercise enough authority.
A healthy balance between kindness and authority is best.
Where is the evidence of my crime? An accusation that condemns me to a moral death.
If it had been done to me, what has been done to you, I would not go to church anymore.
Holy Man of God, will you please pray for me?
The position of power is like a cancer. It eats at you slowly.
I wish I would have faith.
Father, why don't you say something?
It's not enough that you are trying to persuade everyone in here to become a priest. Now you're grooming nuns from here too? What are you doing with these women?
Why are you doing this?
Refrain from coming here!
My body may be withering away, but my soul is not.
There you go, everybody. Check us out. ShawnPGreene.com. Great Lakes Christian Film Festival coming up this summer. So if you're interested in being a part of it, go to glcff.com. You never know what's going to show up at the festival, what type of films are going to be submitted. We have submissions up until the end of May this year, and then our festival is the first weekend of August. So if you have a chance, come on out. We're going to be in East Aurora possibly this year again. Just stay tuned for that. For the meantime, log in to ShawnPGreene.com. Go check out all of our other shows that we've done, audio and video, and make your comments for this one right here on 716-253-1870. And also, we have our Facebook page. You can join in and watch everything that we post every day. All right? So thanks again. Thank you for everything you guys have done. Enjoy your day.